the chat box open because there's so many people in the room. We want to make sure that we get to everybody. But there is also if you want to raise your hand. So we'll be watching for hands. We'll be watching the chat box just to make sure that we can get as many people involved in the conversation as possible. We're being creative and doing it via Zoom, of course. I just got out of a meeting and it was about choices versus requirements. If it was our choice, Stephen and I would have been in the same room, so we could have interacted a little bit, but this is a requirement, and so we're doing the best we can. So I'd like to welcome Stephen Mogdan. We are here this morning to learn about Stephen bringing his name forward as a candidate for mayor for the fall of 2021. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. I think most of everybody on this group has a good idea of who you are, but I'm going to hand the floor over to you, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks very much, Cindy. And thanks to the Chamber for hosting this event. The Chamber has always been very dedicated to hosting election events, whether it's municipal or provincial or federal. It's going to be a bit tougher this year, I think, because of COVID, of course. And the Chamber is unfortunately going to be losing their usual debate moderator. So if there's a debate planned later on, I don't know what you're going to do, but you'll struggle along somehow. So thanks very much for setting this up. And honestly, for you and your staff, Cindy, plugging along through COVID. I think it's an important thing for businesses to be able to see, that optimism and, those resources available. So that's great. Thanks to everyone for joining us today and for attending really an election themed event that is so freaking far away of the election. Because it's certainly a little ways down the road. So in terms of an agenda today, I'm going to give a little bit of a presentation. I'm kind of operating from the perspective that some of the people on the call don't really know me. I've seen names as they're being admitted and that sort of thing, and I know a lot of those names, but no doubt there's going to be some people that I don't know or that don't know me. So I'll give a little bit of a presentation first. And what I'm going to talk to you about really is two things. First, the 5 W's, and those are the 5 W's that you learned in elementary school, probably, the who, what, where, when, and why. And then secondly, I'm going to talk about some of the things that I'd like to see happen in our community. And then after that, a Q&A session. I think we have until 10, Cindy, and I didn't schedule anything after this, really soon after this. So if we have to run a little bit long, I'm able to do that as well if other people are. So then once we get through that, then we'll do some Q&A and see how long that goes. I don't have a PowerPoint today. It is just Stephen live without a net or what have you. So I'm going to talk first about who I am, what I'm running for, when this will be important to pay attention to, where, as far as that is actually a significant thing for this, and most importantly, why I'm running. And I'll start with the last of those. So the why. Why do I want to run for mayor of Lethbridge, and why should you support me, vote for me, get the word out, help me out, that type of thing. In my view, these are the most important questions. Why I'm running is the question that I'm getting most often these days. Usually it's asked in a genuine fashion. Sometimes it's asked in a way that implies that I must be crazy for doing it. But who knows, maybe I am a little bit crazy for doing it, but there is a set of reasons for wanting to do this, motivations for wanting to run. They're kind of intertwined. The shortest expression of it is that I have the skills, disposition, and leadership experience to move Lethbridge forward in a positive fashion and to help my community. And that's really what my goal is through the campaign and beyond. To break that down a little bit, I've always been very dedicated to serving my community. And over the 20 years that I've lived in Lethbridge, I've always been involved in supporting my community through various organizations. I'll discuss those organizations in a little bit when I get more to the who portion of those 5 W's. But the point here really is that serving in a municipal government fashion is really an extension of that commitment. and one of the best ways, in my view, for me to continue supporting my community and to have the greatest and most positive impact on Lethbridge. Any community needs good leadership, and Lethbridge is no exception, especially with Mayor Spearman deciding not to run for a third term. And so come October, we're going to have a choice to make. Will we come together and accomplish things for the benefit of the community, or will we allow ourselves to be divided, isolated, looking out for our own interests and maybe not getting things done? I've demonstrated throughout my couple of decades in Lethbridge that I can bring people together in a positive fashion to achieve goals. And I truly believe that I can translate that into leading council to achieve goals and successes that will benefit our community as a whole. I'm also a bit of a political junkie, so maybe there is some personal motivation involved in doing that. So as for the who, a brief introduction to me. Some of you know a few things about me. Some of you probably know a lot about me, but there's probably lots that you don't know. So hopefully you'll come away with a little bit more of a picture of who I am. As has been noted already in the chat, I'm an Oilers fan. Hopefully that's not disqualifying. And I wouldn't not vote for someone who's a Flames fan. So we'll just leave that on the table. I was born in ⁻71, and when the election is finished, I won't quite be 50. So depending on your perspective, that means that I either have the energy of youth or I have the wisdom of age. I mused to some people yesterday about how old our youngest mayor would have been when first elected. And one of them got back to me and said they thought maybe Charles McGrath was in his 30s when first elected. And so I was thinking, that was a while ago. So if you adjust for inflation, maybe that means that person would be in the 50s at this point. So who knows, maybe I would be the youngest person. I was born and raised in Calgary. Originally, I wanted to be a fiction writer, and when I was getting out of high school, I was thinking that I needed to have maybe a little more life experience and a little more knowledge about the world. So I went to university and did my undergrad degree in history. After that, I moved to Ireland and did a master's degree in medieval history at Trinity College, Dublin. And I think we have, maybe at least one person on the line aside from me who is a medieval history enthusiast. So go us, I guess. Came back from there to Alberta and married my wife, well, my fiance at the time, of course. And we've been together, married now for almost 24 years, more than 30 years, I guess, together. Her name is Sandy. We have 2 boys. They're 18 and 16. Their names are Alex and Will. And they're pretty good kids. So I think we've maybe done some things right in the parenting department. We have 2 dogs. We have a 21-month-old St. Bernese named Benedict and a 4-month-old Bernese mountain dog named Augustine. So they go by Benny and Gus. They keep us hopping and active. If you know anything about the breed, you know that it has a fairly thick coat. So you don't get to decide not to go walk when it's -20 or -25 because they expect it and they're just fine out in that temperature. I work as a lawyer at Stringham LLP and have ever since I've been in Lethbridge. Back in the day, it was Stringham Denicky. Some of you might remember that. So I started there as an articling student and became an associate and then a partner, and have been a partner now for close to 15 years, I guess. I practice mostly business law, real estate, and wills and estates now, but I've done other things as well, like matrimonial law and that sort of thing in the past. I'm definitely not running because I don't like practicing law. I do really love practicing law, and I do for 3 main reasons. The first is the people that I get to help on a daily basis. The second is the people that I get to work with. My partners, associates, support staff are all really great people and love them dearly. And the third is the variety of files and circumstances and issues and weird and fun stuff that lawyers get to see in their daily practice. It's really great. One of the best things about being a lawyer is that it has always afforded me some flexibility to be involved in my community, and I've always taken advantage of that. As you may be aware, I've been involved with the Chamber for many, many years and eventually served as the president of the Chamber in 2014 and 2015. I've also been a member of the board and sometimes chair of the Downtown BRZ for 2 terms over the last 10 or so years. here. I've been with the board of the Lethbridge YMCA for about 5 years now. And I've been the vice chair and chair of that organization. In 2020, I agreed to serve on Economic Development Lethbridge's Economic Recovery Task Force. And really that was designed to be a business-focused response to COVID and the pressures of COVID, including being a resource center to business owners, employers, employees, that type of thing, and was really great to be involved in. In my spare time, I like to golf, curl, and go to the gym. My favorite pastime is actually America's pastime, so baseball. So today is a really great day, not only because I get to present to all of you, but also because it's opening day, which is maybe the best day of the year, in my view. I will travel for baseball a couple times a year if we ever get back to traveling. Hopefully that won't be too much longer. I've had to miss 2 spring trainings in a row now and miss that dearly. I love coffee, wine, and cooking, and I collect pens. When we arrived in Lethbridge, we lived on the north side, and a little bit after that, we moved over to the west side, and we've been there ever since. I'll finish off the rest of the 5 W's here really quick, the what, when, and where. So as I said, I'm running for mayor of Lethbridge. I'm the first person to declare their candidacy, which I did on March 11th. There is currently one other candidate who has declared, but by the time the nomination period ends in September, I would expect there to be probably a good half dozen candidates or so. The timing of my announcement was deliberate. I did want to be the first person to announce for the obvious reasons of being first to do anything, right? But also because I wanted some time to be able to increase my visibility through social media and in other formats. It's entirely possible that one or more of the people who might be running against me might have more name recognition, that sort of thing. So the more time that I have to get out in front of people and talk to people, the better. The when, so October 18th is election day. There will be early voting as in the past. As for the why, of course, this isn't terribly significant. You have to be a Lethbridge resident to vote, of course, and you have to have lived here for a certain amount of time. New this year is the ability to vote in a place where you don't necessarily live. So if you live in, on the south side, but you work downtown, if it's more easier for you to vote downtown, then you can certainly do that. So that's about it for the 5 W's. As to what I'd like to see in Lethbridge, I'll go through a few things and then we can get to some questions. I do have some things that I would like to see happen in the community, but I want to make clear from the outset that I don't have all the answers at this moment. There's a lot of time between now and the election, and I want to use that time and really planned deliberately to be able to use that time to have conversations with Lethbridge residents on what civic issues matter most to them and why. I've invited the public to contact me through my website and Facebook and that sort of thing to share those thoughts, and I've been getting some really great feedback and some great questions and comments and that sort of thing. So people can go to mogdanformayor.ca to make a submission to me. That's the number 4, Mogdan for Mayor. And so far I've been able to answer each of those. The first thing that I want to accomplish is to move our leadership forward. So Lethbridge needs a leader that will bring our community together. And to me, that starts with leading council. And in my view, we've seen too much division and dissension on council in the last few years. Our council should always function in a civil and a positive fashion. And in my past community service, I've been able to bring people together and groups of people together to get them pulling in the same direction and towards a common goal. I recognize when I say this that this is a bit of a nebulous issue or difficult to define, but it is really important for the community. One way that it translates into specific results is ensuring that Lethbridge is able to start and maintain productive dialogues and relationships with our provincial government. And we need a mayor and council that can do that regardless of who holds the most seats in the legislature. I'm not affiliated with any particular political party on any side of the political spectrum, and I intend to run a deliberately nonpartisan campaign. We don't have the luxury in Lethbridge, in my view, of alienating a provincial government or whoever the premier is or his or her party. And that really comes, I think, from leadership. Effective and positive leadership also means that we need to be able to have great working relationships with neighboring municipalities, especially the county. Currently, that relationship, I think, could be a lot closer. The fact that we sit in a region where our economic drivers are located both inside and outside of the city limits really means that we need to ensure that we're always in a position to benefit from those relationships, and that involves having a good relationship with our neighbors. One of the things that's really important to me is I'd like to see our community have or approach land use decisions in a much more positive and constructive manner than I think we have been. We've seen over the last little while a number of proposals come forward. Most recently, you might think of the Western One mustard seed soup kitchen proposal, and we've seen these receive heavy criticism. So those proposals, where they're controversial proposals because they're related to services for particular sectors of the community, those proposals and the response to them have done much to divide our community, in my view. And I think we're, in a sense, letting that happen because we're not managing the conversation well enough. We're not managing expectations to the best of our ability. We're not communicating the benefits and limitations of our system. And we're not sufficiently underlining or making the case for the needs that we need to serve as a community and how important it is that we address those needs. So where those issues have come before council, they've been shot down. In some cases, it hasn't even gone that far because the opposition from some quarters has been so vocal that those proposals have been abandoned before they even really get going. But service agencies abandoning proposals that would help people in our city who need to be helped doesn't really get us closer to addressing the problems that we've seen in our city. And I think that we can handle this much better and achieve much more success for Lethbridge by managing those conversations better and by really getting out in front of proposals for controversial services at an early stage. Next, as a downtown business owner and someone who served on the downtown BRZ for a fairly long time, I'm keenly interested to see our downtown improved, especially for business. In part, this is tied, of course, to providing adequate services for the population in Lethbridge, largely centered in the downtown or adjacent there too, that suffers from addiction issues, cognitive or development deficits, chronic poverty, those things, right? But it's really more than that. I'd like to see our city make a serious run at making the downtown a destination of choice for people owning or starting a business. For shopping, for enjoying recreation, those things. I'm still finalizing details on that, but I think we can certainly look at a number of initiatives, including targeted property tax relief, targeted redevelopment grants, and business-friendly improvement programs along the lines of things like the Main Street program that the BRZ has been so important in helping out with. I think we can and should collaborate with organizations like the BRZ to be able to ramp up entertainment activities, special events, festivals, that type of thing in our downtown. We've certainly seen some success in that regard with things like moving the downtown farmers market over to kind of close to my office, right where Java the Hut is. And I think that's really brought kind of a new look to that and a new vibrancy to that. And I think we should be looking at doing more of that type of thing. As we move forward, I think we're going to need to be careful with our budgeting and spending priorities. When it comes to spending, my main focus is ensuring that spending meets clear and stated objectives and that it benefits the most people for the least cost as possible. We therefore need to be able to weigh the cost of proposals against the benefits that we reasonably can assume will come from those proposals. You probably think of a number of different specific issues. I'll highlight just one. People talk about when are we going to get a third bridge, right? But really, I think we need to take a close look at, is that an effective use of our tax dollars? How many people really would benefit from that? What is our return on that spend? How necessary is it? And if we need it someday, and likely we will at some point need that, should we be looking at doing it earlier rather than later if we can achieve some savings, realize some efficiencies if we do it earlier? So I highlight that issue not to give you, my position on a third bridge, but really to illustrate my approach to that issue of, how are we going to prioritize spending? Money will be tight, continue to be tight over the next number of years. And I think we need to be prudent about spending as we move forward. We need to continue to prioritize investment in our agri-food industry and in our renewable energy industry. If we've learned anything over the past 15 years, it really should be that diversification of our economy should be near the top of our priorities. Our investment in the Exhibition Park Agri-Food Hub is a good example, I think, of an investment in an area that will return dollars to our community. We were just talking about the function that took place yesterday out there, the groundbreaking, and Cindy with her shovel and all that stuff. So yeah, I guess I'll stop there so that we can make sure that we have some time for questions. At the end of the day, you can find out more by going to my website. So as I said, mogdanformayor.ca, and signing up and receiving updates and that sort of thing. You can also find my Facebook page linked there, and my Twitter and that sort of thing. So if you want to go on those and give me a like and all that stuff, that'd be great. And really, as we move forward, I'd like to hear from people through those channels. Let me know what your thoughts are, what things you'd like to see. What concerns you. We have a lot of time between now and the election, so lots of time to do that. So, or get a hold of me at the office. I'm really not that hard to find. So yeah, thanks everyone. Let's move on to some questions. I see at least a couple of hands up.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephen. So who knew? You a medieval junkie and a pen collector. That's an interesting combination. Well, I know Mike Schmidtler has a question, so I'll ask you to unmute Mike, and please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Cindy, and thanks for putting this on. This is awesome, and I love to see all the people that are here. The other thing I wanted to say, Stephen, is I've known you for some time, and we are very privileged to have a candidate of your caliber step up and want to run for mayor. A couple of the comments that you made really struck with me. One was that what we really need on from a mayor and council is less divisiveness. We need a team approach. And the last time we had a lawyer as a mayor, he did a pretty good job of that. So I just wanted to throw that out there. The other comment that you made, it's not part of my question yet, is with respect to things like the supervised consumption side of the mustard seed and whatnot. I think there's a lot of people in the city that really want to see those needs looked after, both in the business community and in the public sector. I think we want to see those things done. But I think what people really want is to see a plan. And you did address that. You made that comment. People don't want to see what happened with the supervised consumption site, that something just gets plunked where it happens to be convenient with very little planning that goes into it or even consultation. So I'm really, really glad that you addressed those right off the bat. So my specific question is, and I got to give some background to this, is it's around city spending. I have a little bit of involvement in this. When I was president of Build, I was actively involved in a study that looked at competitiveness in Lethbridge, specifically with respect to spending and taxes. And we didn't fare very well. We presented that, and I want to say when we presented it to council, it was warmly welcomed. Bram Strain, when he was city manager, he welcomed us in to present it. We really felt like that it was welcomed into council. After that, the KPMG study came out, and right off the bat, one of the great things that came out of it was the contracting out of busing, the school busing. And that happened very, very quickly. And it was, we were one of the last places really in North America where unionized city employees were the ones, driving school kids around. So they've done a great job on that, but not much has happened since then. And during COVID, many of us have heard rumors of, for instance, bus drivers working from home. I think if you are a restaurant owner or you're somebody that lost their job as a result of COVID, hearing stories about bus drivers working from home is a bit insulting. So it's those kinds of things that I'm hoping that and that's the question now is I'm sure you're aware of the KPMG study. Wanted to get your sense of, how much of a priority you think it is, and specifically with respect to our ability to compete with other municipalities if our taxes are seen as higher than many other places. And the last thing I'll say is that we weren't the only voice. The CFIB came out with a similar study, as did the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. So with that, I just wanted to get your sense on city spending in the KPMG study.
For sure. I just want to circle back to one of your earlier comments about a lawyer serving in public office, because we see that you see negative comments on social media and stuff like that saying, oh great, another lawyer. Right, where really we haven't had that many, either on council or in the mayor's seat. So I'm not quite sure where that comes from, but there's a reason that lawyers tend to be motivated to be involved in politics, and sometimes can be pretty good at it, because really lawyers are trained to take a look at issues and find the pros and cons of both sides. Because really a lawyer should be able to argue both sides of any given issue, right? That's what we're trained to do. We advocate for a client. So that's the type of approach that I think lawyers can bring to issues in municipal politics, and certainly one of the things that I would try to do, because in a sense it's kind of how I'm hardwired, right? Because I've been doing that for 20 years. I also wanted to just circle back really quick on the idea of the supervised consumption site and people being opposed to that, and the thing that I wanted to make clear is that I truly feel that the business community has often been unfairly painted in those dialogues as being really hard-hearted and that sort of thing, and I think it's unfair because really a business owner works for so long in starting a business, maintaining a business, growing it, all that stuff. And business owners need reliability and certainty to move forward. It's really, I think it's the number one thing that business owners need is they need to know that what's happening today is going to be what's happening tomorrow, because then they can make plans. So I think business owners get unfairly painted that way. Do they care about their community? I think they care about their community as much as anyone else, right? That's why they're business owners. That's why they have employees. That's that they're there to support their community. So I think we always need to make sure that that's kept in mind. More specifically about the city spending, and thanks for that question. I think it's going to be a really important issue as we move forward in the campaign, but also past that. The KPMG study, I think, was really important to be received, and more importantly, I think it needs to be followed up on, acted upon. We need to keep those recommendations in mind as we move forward. When it comes to contracting out any specific services, I think we always need to make sure that we're looking at the cost benefit of whatever that proposal may be, right? There are going to be city services that maybe aren't that great to contract out. A private contractor might charge too much, might not be able to really make a go of it unless they truncate services in certain portions of the city or to certain groups and that sort of thing. And so really that's where I think you see the city taking that role traditionally in the past to make sure those things are delivered to the community. But if we can do it in a way where we can contract out to someone that can achieve all the goals we need them to achieve and can do it for a better cost, then certainly we should be looking at that as a city moving forward. Dollars are going to continue to be tight. So
yeah, if I could just add, Stephen, it's a great point that you're making. We often hear that if you contract out, that the level of service goes down. You hear that from our current mayor all the time, and it's really a fallacy. But it can be in certain cases for sure. But a great example is the contracting out of school busing. The efficiencies and the level of service has not gone down, and the efficiencies cost-wise are tremendous. As an example, that same contractor is already working with 7 Alberta municipalities and is negotiating with another 4. And their level of service, and if you measure level of service by how far somebody has to walk to a bus stop, it's 400 meters right now for the city of Lethbridge. With that contractor, it's 200 meters, and their cost is 1/3. So the soundbite is twice the level of service for 1/3 the cost. So then I don't want to. It's just an example I'm bringing up, but this fallacy that only the city can provide a high level of service is really a fallacy. And so I just needed to get that out there, and I'd love your response. So thanks for that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I operate from the general principle that private business meets market needs in the most responsive and effective fashion. So that's the general principle. There are going to be some circumstances that detract from that, right? There are going to be some situations where service levels need to be maintained in a way that a private business wouldn't choose to do that. So whenever we're looking at any of those issues, we need to weigh those factors. And if it makes sense for us to maintain a city involvement in something like that, then I think we would do that. But if it's going to benefit our residents and benefit our bottom line to find someone private to deal with those things, let's look at that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Good to see you.
Good seeing
Thanks
you.
for your question, Mike. We're going to move on to Kelty had her hand up next, if you'd like to unmute. And we do have a lot of questions coming through. So traditionally we put a timer on things, but we won't do that because we know this conversation is important. But please go ahead, Kelty.
Thanks so much, Cindy, and thank you, Stephen. I am also running for City Council under a councillor position. So my question's more about how do you maintain cohesion at the council level, and what does your ideal council look like?
Great question. Good to see you, Kelty. I didn't want to mention you by name in the formal part of the presentation, but yeah, I knew you were going to be on because of our Twitter stuff and that sort of thing. So good to see you, and thanks for that question. What would I see the ideal council look like? That's a really good question. I think it really needs to be a group of people who can talk with each other. And do that not just around the semicircle in council chambers, but in other formats. And people really that at the end of the day have the best interests of the community in mind and not their own interests. And I don't say that to impute that to anybody right now, but really I think that's the qualities that we need in councillors. We need people that are going to be committed to the role, that are going to put in the work that they need to put in, which, I mean, it's a little bit of an interesting circumstance when you have part-time councillor roles. I think down the road at some point we would get to the position where we're looking at having full-time councillors, but I think we're still a ways off of that, being a community of 100,000 people, but it's part of the code of conduct. I mean, you've probably been through the code of conduct already, that you are committing to do that, to make sure that you're there for all the meetings and as far as possible, of course, and you're prepared and that sort of thing.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Sandra Dufresne, we have you in the lineup as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Stephen, I really liked your comment in your opener talking about how this run for mayor is a natural extension of your already impressive community support. And I think it's a very natural extension of how you got here. So I really appreciate that. My question is in regards to partnerships with post-secondaries in the city, certainly most particularly the college. And how do you see the city leveraging opportunities with the college for student work integrated learning opportunities?
Thanks, Sandra. Good to see you. We're very lucky as a community of 100,000 people to have two really great higher education institutions, and we should always be leveraging that. I think it should be a point of attraction to Lethbridge. I mean, we certainly We certainly get students coming here from other areas, to attend either the college or the university. And I think it's something that should really be a point of attraction, right? We should be getting that message out to other communities that this is a great place for higher learning. We have a great population of students, and yeah, we really service that well. As far as opportunities and the way the city can partner, I think we should always be looking at that. I mean, the college and the university are first of all great institutions, but they're also great employers in our city, right? And we should definitely be working on those relationships where we can do student integrated learning. Certainly, I think council should be open to looking at that. Those types of things would come through to administration, and administration would look at that and then presumably make recommendations to council. But that's certainly something that, the closer our relationship is with the college and with the university, I think that's better for the city and for those institutions.
Great, thanks. If I could just ask one follow-up, make one point is, as performance-based measures come into play for post-secondary education, so part of our funding is now going to be reliant on how we do against measure. The first and only one for the coming year is work integrated learning. So I think if we can demonstrate that we are partnering with our municipality and the municipality is offering those opportunities, whether it be internships or co-op opportunities with the municipality, I think will serve us both well through a provincial lens. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I've never been a huge fan of the idea of tying university performance or college performance to those work objectives. As a history major, that doesn't work out all that well very often, right? You have to keep going, right, to make that work, and sometimes that doesn't work for people. So
great. Thanks again, Stephen.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you.
Cindy, just really quick,
sure, absolutely.
I'm not really able to monitor the chat.
I'm looking, I'm watching it for you. I got it. So one of the questions in the chat is, I'm wondering what you see as the role of the public library in our community.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So a public library, I think, is an important institution. It has been threatened by increased online presence. That people can find stuff online instead of maybe going to a physical place where knowledge and books and stuff are collected. But a library, I think, maintains a very important function as a community center type of thing. In COVID, unfortunately we've had to restrict that, and I think that the library has done as good a job as it can do to manage that. At some point, we will not have to worry, presumably, about COVID the way we are right now. And so when that happens, I think the library is going to continue to be very important. It's something that people need access to those resources, and I think we've done a reasonably good job with the library of doing that.
Perfect, thank you. Another question in the chat is, how do you feel about it, and how can you address the issue of dismantling our fire department EMS service, which has been a long-standing service in Lethbridge?
The dismantling of it? Okay. Honestly,
I think now because it's gone provincial instead of local is what I'm assuming.
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm not entirely aware of a proposal to dismantle, because certainly we need fire and EMS services. I mean, the council has fought the good fight on this, has stuck up for Lethbridge, as has council in the other municipalities, right? Fort McMurray's been very very vocal about this. Calgary's been very vocal about this. And the provincial government has not backed down or been dissuaded. At this point, I think that fight is likely over. And if I had my druthers, I would really want to work with the provincial government and try to maximize the effectiveness of that system. I mean, I think we're recognizing that there are some problems with the centralized dispatch, but instead of continuing to fight with the province over it, I'd like to see us work more with the province and try to make that system work the best that we can. Right? I think that horse has left the barn. So let's look at how we can make that situation the best for our community.
Thank you, Stephen. Tara Lennox, who is on our board and actually serves as the convener chair at the Lethbridge Chamber of Commerce, has a question for you. Thank you, Tara.
Thanks, Cindy. Hi, Stephen.
Hey, Tara, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Good. So we had a convener committee meeting this morning, and been hearing a lot about concerns that many businesses across the city are struggling with staffing shortages, and that affordable housing is a bit of a barrier to bringing people into the area. Additional like skilled workers and laborers and stuff to the areas to help fill these shortages. How would you address the housing affordability and availability, I guess, in this area if you're the successful candidate?
For sure. Thanks for the question. We're in a situation where I think COVID is still having kind of an outsized impact on that. I do think that there are people that can work and maybe aren't maximizing those opportunities because of COVID benefits and that sort of thing. And we will get through that. But to address the idea of affordable housing, certainly it's a need in our community. On Tuesday night, we had a town hall function that the chamber hosted on that, and we heard some really great ideas for that. Especially I think Rob and James had some really great insights on that. It's a difficult area, right? We need to make sure that that we have affordable housing available for people, that we're not having people that are really busting their entire budget on putting a roof over their head. We need to be able to have people that are coming here and are able to fill those roles. So we need to make sure that that's funded adequately, and we need to make sure that we're doing it in a smart way. So to the extent that we can have third parties assist us with providing good quality, well-run, affordable housing, I think we definitely need to be looking at that as a city.
Thank you, Tara. Last year, the chamber presented a report to the city suggesting that businesses, we did a survey and we found that businesses are dealing with a lack of service options with regards to internet and dead zones. And I know, Stephen, you and I have been on quite a few meetings where the Zoom stalls or fades out. So if you were elected, what would you do to help businesses access this or help enhance internet across Lethbridge?
Yeah, so we should be looking at it enhancing broadband, right? And certainly that's been a pretty major thrust from economic development Lethbridge side. So the city needs to be behind that and help that move forward. Really, we've seen through COVID, a lot of ways that people are looking at delivering services in an alternative fashion. Even dinosaurs like lawyers are figuring out that we can deliver services to clients online, right? Which is very, very difficult thing to sort of get through our skulls, but we're figuring that out, right? And once COVID, I think, ebbs away, I think we'll still see people wanting to use those services, wanting to use those delivery options. I know we've certainly talked about it here at the firm in terms of being able to have an online presence that is not just because of COVID or clients can't come in or that type of thing, but as a way to deliver additional services to a wider audience, right? And I think you're going to see a continued insistence and importance placed on that. And we need to make sure that the resources are in place that makes that viable, right? I mean, if you're going to do service offerings based on that, you need to make sure that it's not going to be interrupted, or people are coming through and you get every second or third word, or that type of thing. It's just creates a huge frustration and really is an impediment to business moving forward.
Thank you. Now I apologize. There's a hand up and it says King's iPad. I'm sorry. So please unmute and ask your question to Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you. It's Diane King, and I am representing today the Performing Arts Center Advocacy Group. And my question for you, Stephen, would be, what is your understanding of the proposed Performing Arts Center, and what is your position on it? And I would like to also say that our group would very much like to meet with you.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Diane. So first of all, I certainly would be interested in meeting with you. I probably don't know all of the specifics that I would need to know moving forward, but I mean, there still is time to do that, and I'm sure your group can assist with that quite ably. In my view, a city as it moves forward needs to have things that attract people, that keep people in the city, and things like a performing arts center, I think, go a long way towards that. We're 100,000 now, and we're going to continue to grow. We've been one of the fastest growing communities, so we're going to continue to grow. And in my view, we need to have those things in our city. They're big ticket items, right? They're big cost items. So that always brings a set of challenges with it. I mean, you'll definitely have groups within the community just resiling from the idea of that simply because of the price tag. But in my view, and kind of harkening back to what I talked about before, we really need to make sure that when we're looking at spending on things, we need to measure the benefits against the cost of it, right? So, if we just look at a performing arts center as a spend, including the capital cost and then cost for staffing it and that sort of thing, it's a big number. It's maybe an ugly number and makes people afraid. But if we look on the other side as to what are we able to attract in terms of entertainment options to Lethbridge, does it put us more on the map? Does it help us attract people to come to Lethbridge as a destination? If you have people that are tired of being in the big city, Calgary or Edmonton, and they're looking at moving somewhere else, having things like a performing arts center, I think, are a really great attraction point. In my view, I would want to see some of those bigger ticket items, where possible, sort of married together with other uses, so that we're not necessarily spending X amount of dollars on a performing arts center as a standalone, and X number of dollars on something else as a standalone. If we could keep those or put those two together in a way that increases the the desirability of both of those. So that's kind of my view on that at this stage.
Thank you.
Thank you. A question we have in the chat is, as mayor, how would you build relationships with diverse cultural groups in the city?
For sure. Great question. We certainly have seen I think a remarkable growth of diverse cultural groups within our city. We can think of Bhutanese and other African communities and that sort of thing. We definitely need to make outreaches to those communities, I think. How to do that? I think that would start with inviting them to come to City Hall, come meet with some of us. Let's find out what is important to those groups. What things do they need to see within the community? what things help their members of their community, and really let us know what the particular concerns are, right? I don't maybe have positioned as I am, maybe I don't know enough that I need to know about any of those groups, and certainly willing to learn, as should the city, right? The city should be inclusive for all of its residents, right? And if a group of residents feels like they're on the outside, I think that's bad for the city, and as well as being bad for that group.
Perfect. We have another hand up. Gabe, I hope I'm saying that. If you want to, please speak. Thank you.
Mr. Mogdan, following up on sort of your last question there, how would you promote an inclusive city that's welcoming to individuals with developmental and physical disabilities?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Gabe. So I think we need to look at how we're delivering services, city services, and make sure that we are hearing from people that do have developmental or mobility issues, or any of those issues, and make sure that we're responding to those in an effective fashion. As for particular specifics on that, I don't really have a lot of that at this point, but really a city should be making sure that it is accessible, that all of its residents are able to function the same way any other resident is able to function.
Thank you. Now, it kind of it follows on what Tara had kind of asked as well, but with a view to many people in need for housing, especially the folks who need step up from the street or near homelessness, what would be your first 100-day action or vision to helping?
So in the first 100 days, I think that really needs to be an information collection period. Whether that takes 100 days to do that, I don't know. I suspect you could make long strides in that earlier than 100 days. But I mean, you're really looking at a period of about 3 months. So once the term starts, that's something that I think we should be looking at in terms of finding. Sorry, just had a message pop up on my. Let's see. So finding out, what we need to do for that, and then look at translating that into action. Whether that's through administration, or if we're looking at partnering with other groups or entities in the city. That's certainly an approach that I would be in favor of.
Perfect, thank you. And just a fun fact that I don't know how many of you know, but Rick Hansen a couple years ago was awarded an honorary doctorate degree from the University of Lethbridge. So he would be a great connection through the U of L and through maybe the city to address some of those ideas, because he's excellent. I had the opportunity to be with him for the day, and he was a fantastic connection that we do have as a source for the city. Stephen, we're at 9:55. Now we've got a couple more questions all of a sudden just popped up. We give the 5-minute warning, and wow. So from Knud, we got, thanks, Stephen, for making yourself available. My question is about density. Are you in favor of growing up more than growing out?
For sure. Thanks for the question, Knut. I've always found Lethbridge to be a little bit odd in the sense that it's very flat for a city of Lethbridge's population. I would really expect to see more vertical growth, and I think we're going to see that as we move forward. I think the draft MDP really has some emphasis in that area. We have the luxury of having a lot of space, right? I've lived in Europe, and I'm able to compare that to here, where in Europe there isn't the amount of lateral space, right? So naturally, they do build up, and I think if done right, I think it can really promote a sense of community. It can reduce costs necessary to service, municipal services. So I think there's a lot of potential wins that way, and I don't see why anyone would have a particular problem with the idea of being a little more dense in terms of, that sounds funny to say, but increasing density, I guess I would say, in terms of sort of more vertical construction.
Thank you.
We shouldn't be dense, I guess, is what I'm going to say.
Don't be afraid to jump. Get vertical.
Right.
The last question we have in the chat is, can you tell us about the importance of the city's relationship with both Indigenous peoples and neighbors in Kainai?
For sure. In my view, I think it's critical, right? Where we're positioned, we have that heritage, right? And if we're not celebrating that heritage, I think we're losing out on a significant portion of what makes Lethbridge and its position in Southern Alberta unique. There's a lot of really great cultural crossovers that I think we need to explore. And I think the city's done a fairly decent job of making those outreaches, and I think we need to continue that for sure.
Perfect. 2 minutes, and we've got Kelty has one quick. She's got her hand up. Let you give a closing statement, Stephen.
Yeah, so just a quick note on building up. Lethbridge is actually built, it's an old mining community, so we're actually built on over 5,000 kilometers of tunnels and coal mine shafts under the city. So building up is actually kind of risky. We have a height restriction for the weight of the building. So that is definitely a factor on why Lethbridge is so flat. The question I have though is, you mentioned the MDP, and I am a giant junkie around policy and stuff. So the MDP, especially in yesterday's and the day before and Tuesday's conversations around the municipal development plan, they talked a lot about density, and they talked a lot about zoning changes. So Lethbridge has very restrictive zoning laws and bylaws that prevent essentially high density residential and high-end high density residential with commercial buildings. So thinking about communities in Calgary like the downtown or Inglewood, where we're seeing a lot of development of mixed use commercial residential, where you have an apartment building that's maybe 5 or 6 stories tall, and you have residential on the top and commercial on either the first floor or first 2 floors. Is that kind of a development pattern that you would be comfortable with seeing in Lethbridge? And do you think there's any benefit to that?
So I did notice that, and don't take this the wrong way, but I did notice that you were kind of geeking out last night on MDP stuff. So I thought it was funny to watch on Twitter, but keep it going, I guess. Yeah, as a general principle, I really do like the idea of commercial development with residential development on top. I mean, it has to be correctly located, right? I mean, there's going to be portions of the city where that isn't, really a viable option. But where it is, where it can make sense, I definitely would look at exploring, changes to the land use bylaw that would foster that for sure.
If I can just chime in, because it's the industry that I'm in, one of my favorite people to listen to when it comes to densification is a guy like Bruce Galtz. What he'll talk to you about is there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in this city around densification. When you think about the college and the university, the power center down south, downtown, there's a lot of places where densification can be done really, really well, but you don't have to force it in every part of the city. You can get some great densification in some places. And I think, Kelly, I can see by the look on your face that you know what I'm talking about, right? So there's lots of great opportunities for us to do it, but we don't have to force fit that into every development that we do.
Yeah, for sure. Great comment, Mike. And kind of, piggybacks on what I was saying, right? I think it's going to make sense in some areas, and in other areas, it's not going to make sense. So let's look at those and see where we can do that. Yeah, and if it is low-hanging fruit, I mean, who doesn't like fruit? And particularly if you don't have to reach all that high for it.
Good. And we're going to hit you with Mark Brown's last question, which I love. Talks about vision and diversity and tax base. What is your vision for Lethbridge over the course of your term from an economic diversity and tax base growth?
For sure. Thanks, Mark, for that. So as I kind of said earlier, I really think that we should be looking at economic diversification in Lethbridge and getting behind that. Providing resources for that. So where we can look at increasing our agri-food presence, where we can look at things like increasing our role as a transportation provider and transportation hub, we definitely need to look at that. I think it's something that we can do pretty well. I think we're positioned fairly well for that, and move forward with that. I think also over the term, I'd really like to see us grow as a city. So the more of that diversification that we can do, I think that the more that we can attract people to Lethbridge, and definitely hopefully keep people here for sure.
Thank you. So economic development wise, I do see people are starting to drop off. So I do want to give you a chance to do some kind of closing statement, and then we can hang on a little bit longer for those that want to. What would you do to advocate in support of economic development in Lethbridge, and why?
You just cut out there for a second, and it's so funny. It's because we were talking about that a few minutes ago.
Oh, heaven. And my question about economic development. So what would you do to advocate, because we've done that with the Recovery Task Force as business, to support of economic development in Lethbridge, and why?
So first of all, I think we need to make sure that we always have strong relationships with all levels of government that we can, to garner support and garner attention for Lethbridge as a community that can have, does and can increase its role as a diverse economy down here. So that's one. Another one definitely is supporting the people and the entities that move that forward. So I think EDL has done a really great job throughout its lifespan, but particularly over the last 10 years or so has I think been a really great organization at bringing attracting dollars to our community, attracting businesses to our community. We've seen some really great successes. So we definitely should, be behind them and let them move forward.
Any final April 1st? Hey, it's still before noon. We haven't had any jokes.
I was going to say that one of my first priorities was going to be to double the area of off-leash dog parks in Lethbridge within the first couple of years. But yeah, at any rate, I guess I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank everyone who took the time to be on the call this morning. Like I said, I'm happy to have conversations with Lethbridge. So reach out to me, get a hold of me at the office through the website. When you make that call, you get some really interesting things back, and things that you might not have expected. I had someone submit something to me through the website where they were asking what my thoughts were on trying to make sure that younger voters are engaged in the process. And it's something that I hadn't really given a lot of specific thought to before I got that question. But then once I got the question, it really made me think and come up with some ideas around doing that. So that type of thing, I love to get those outreaches. I think it will make me a better candidate moving forward, and I think it would make me a better mayor if the city chooses to support my bid. So I'd like to thank everyone for being on the call this morning. I look forward to moving forward with the campaign and talking to people, and yeah, hopefully doing more of this stuff. Hopefully COVID allows us to have more election events and that sort of thing, but we'll see as time goes on.
Perfect. Yes, thank you everybody for attending. The Lethbridge Chamber of Commerce will be holding more of these throughout the election season, and we look forward to doing that because we do, as I said at the beginning, we feel it's really important to hear the voice of our candidates and ask some of those questions that the chamber wants to hear. So, I appreciate Mike Schmidtler starting us off with the questions. It's always great to have good questions starting you right off the hop to get the question train going. So I appreciate your attendance, and I look forward to hosting more events. Have a wonderful, happy Easter, everyone. We're going into a long weekend. That's another positive of the day. So April 1st, and happy Easter, and take care, everybody.
Cindy, if there's any other questions that are in the chat, are you able to send those to me?
Yes, I will.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Take care.